Hello and welcome to the Charles Cook Podcast. The focus of this podcast is local and state issues here in the state of Tennessee. You can follow my podcast on Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Rumble, Spotify, iHeartRadio, Google Podcasts, TuneIn, and Alexa. Just search for the Charles Cook Podcast. You can also follow and subscribe on any of those platforms, and you'll be notified whenever I upload new content. The best place to find those links is on my podcast webpage at charlescookpodcast.buzzsprout.com. You can contact me by email at charlescookpodcast@gmail.com. Today, my guest is Aundrea Gomez. She is with the Citizens for Renewing America, and I think she's the state director for that. So with that, welcome, Aundrea, and I'll let you go ahead and tell us what you do here in the state and what your organization is about. Welcome.
Thank you so much. Appreciate it. It's great to be here and get to talk to you this morning. So you're correct. I am the Tennessee Director for Citizens for Renewing America. This is the activist arm of Center for Renewing America. And we're a newer organization founded by Russ Vogt. And Russ was Trump's OMB director, Office of Management and Budget. And so he founded this organization to hold the line on America first. So we do work in federal issues as well as state issues. My job in Tennessee is to connect with and support the grassroots activists across the state of Tennessee on their America First priorities. So basically, I kind of see myself as a coach and also a conduit from the federal level of what we're doing up there in DC and what kind of fights we're in, which is always something. And then, of course, being connected to what's going on here at the state level and just really getting a good read on what the grassroots in Tennessee is passionate about, what they care about, where they stand on the issues. We're very much focused on being bottom up instead of top down. So it's not my job to come in and tell people what to think or believe. And it's really more about where are they and how can I support them where they're at.
Great. I've been involved in grassroots activism for about 10 or 12 years now. So I know that's a way of getting things done without being elected. So if you could, now I know a little bit of the story here. I heard you tell the story. Tell the viewers or the listeners kind of how you got involved in activism and what you're doing now.
Sure. This was kind of almost on accident. So in my previous life, I was a teacher. I taught California, taught elementary school, and then I took a pretty long break to stay home and have children. When we moved to Tennessee, I did not have an intention of returning to public education, but there were several people I met when we first moved here that just raved about public schools and in our county. And so I said, okay, well, why not? We can try that out. I had been homeschooling our children who are now 14 and 17. And so we said, let's give it a try. We had done public school, we had done private school and homeschool. So let's see what public school is like. And with that, I decided if my kids are going to be out at school all day, that I might as well go back into teaching. So I got a job as an ESL teacher. That's English as a second language. And I did enjoy my job and loved my students. And then in 2020, my job became very difficult and frustrating when everybody was masked up. The students, the teachers, there was no accommodations made for anybody. And so my job every day got harder. And then also I became more and more convicted that this was just wrong, that nobody had the right to take away my ability to breathe normally. And then English, or teaching English to children from around the world is very focused on, you have to focus on phonics. And so you need to be able to see the children's face. They need to be able to see you. So it was nearly impossible to do my job as well. So I decided to take a stand against the mask mandate in my school district. And to make a long story short, I was suspended and ultimately terminated for that decision. And that's kind of what put me on a path to being more involved. I've always been convicted and aware of what's going on politically, but didn't really ever jump in until I really saw the writing on the wall that here we are in Tennessee, which is a beautiful state. We moved here for the conservative nature of Tennessee, left California, fled California, I should say. And when I saw what happened in 2020 here in Tennessee with a Republican supermajority, it was an awakening moment to see how quickly we went right down the path to tyranny.
Yeah.
So that was very eye-opening for me, and I knew that when I was looking for my next job, that I was going to have to find something that matched my principles. That if I'm not going to be able to wear a mask all day, I'm not going to also be able to pretend in some sort of corporate environment, with pronouns in my email or anything like that. And every job that I looked for had a DEI statement or a mandate. And so I wasn't getting anywhere with that. And definitely in education, it's going to be more of a left leaning kind of environment anyway. So I took a chance on a conservative job board and found this position, and it's been a blessing ever since. It's a great match. This organization, I see eye to eye with them on everything. And it's great to just be who I am and be unafraid and be able to go out and speak truth and talk to conservatives across the state. I absolutely love it.
Great. So I know that this is a national organization that you're talking about, but you're the Tennessee director, chairman, or whatever, chair lady. What have you been focusing on here in Tennessee this year with the legislative season? What's been on your radar?
Well, being a former teacher, obviously education is really close to my heart, but election integrity has been a big focus as well. Um, and right now, obviously, everyone's focused on Second Amendment rights.
Right.
So I'm focused on what the grassroots are focused on. I have the same concerns and the same priorities. And we're finding across the state very consistently the main concerns are election integrity, education, what's going on in our government schools, and right now Second Amendment, but medical freedom has been really at the top of the list as well, which was really surprising to me in Tennessee that we were really not being heard when it came during COVID, when it came to, fighting for our medical freedoms, that, we were just as censored in Tennessee and ridiculed in Tennessee and locked down and mandated in Tennessee as many other states. Maybe not as bad as California, but it was still here.
So you're not a single issue organization, you're a multi-issue organization. So as far as education, let's talk about what some of the main issues with education that you were watching this year, pros and cons.
So I think we do have people that are fighting for the right things in Tennessee. But ultimately, there's an overall agenda to kind of globalize education. So we're definitely seeing there are some legislators that want to protect, for example, teachers from being civilly responsible for misusing a pronoun. So we have those protections now. So we're moving in the right direction when it comes to protecting free speech, essentially. I would like to see us do better when it comes to curriculum. That's really more of a local an LEA decision. That's really not so much of a state decision, but we could maybe. One of the things I would like to see happen is that we have a very specific anti-communist type of curriculum statewide in Tennessee. But we're not quite there yet. We are making progress. We did get we got a bill passed that was to protect women or girls' sport in the private school arena. So we've got that protection. We are protecting children when it comes to gender affirming care. I kind of put that and education together because we're still talking about children, right? So we're moving in the right direction, albeit slowly. It's interesting sometimes who we're up against. With a Republican supermajority, you would think things would move quicker and that it would be a little bit easier, but it takes time to get legislators on board with understanding what's going on, and that really is one of my jobs, is to support the grassroots in 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 their relationships that they have built with their elected officials at all levels, so that we can be a resource to them. We are bringing them good information beyond just our emotions and what we want, but we can actually bring them really good, solid information and support them, support the bills that we agree with, and even help them write good legislation. If we're not engaged with our legislators, who is engaged with them? Corporate lobbyists, DC lobbyists.
Yes.
So one of my tasks now that session is done, well, we say done, we know that there's a good chance we're going to go back into special session, but my focus for the rest of this calendar year is on grassroots development. It's visiting these groups across the state, whether they're a Republican group, a Patriot group, a Tea Party group, whatever they call themselves, and really supporting them with developing their influence, their access to our legislators, and their effectiveness. And a lot of that starts with education, knowing our issues and knowing how to communicate the issues, being respectful and being trustworthy. So that's my big focus for the rest of this calendar year, is really getting in front of groups and talking about those things and giving people the tools that they need. That's the Tennessee focus. And then, of course, we have our DC focus that I have to slide in whenever I'm in front of a group as well.
Yeah. So that was a little bit on the education portion of it. You talked about medical freedom. What's some of the issues that you've seen there this year that maybe the viewers or listeners should know about as far as medical freedom that you've seen in Tennessee this year?
So we obviously got protection against employees, that you can't be fired. You have to be accommodated for not taking some sort of mandated vaccine. There was a bill about it was kind of related to the mature minor doctrine that said basically you have to have parent permission in order to vaccinate a child, as young as 12 years old. That's really important. We also need to continue to look at, and I kind of put this in the same category. We do have an issue with mental health services and health screenings that are happening in our schools. And by default, children are already opted into all of these different services that a school offers, unless their parents opted them out. That's the way it's been in the past. We now have a bill that was passed in both houses that says that the school system has to have written permission from the parents in order to do some of these types of health screenings and mental health services and so forth. So that's a really good step in the right direction as well. That it's medical freedom, but it's also it goes into the parents' right of things as well.
Yeah, and some of the things that and it's not just in the school system with the guidance counselors and whether a kid's getting some special help is sometimes the medical questions end up asking questions about things in the home. Uh, is there guns and ammo in homes? Are they locked up and secure? And excuse me, I'm dealing with some allergies here. But even I've seen that even as far as even doctors' offices are asking those questions and stuff now. So that's some of the things that I believe that's going too far in these questions with these kids.
You're 100% correct. And this is a good example of how everything is connected, right? So we have this Trojan horse of social emotional learning that's in our schools. And inside that Trojan horse are all kinds of tools, whether it's critical race theory, diversity, equity, and inclusion, culturally responsive teaching. So there's all sorts of layers to that. But one of the things that has really become very prevalent in our schools is the amount of data that's being collected on our students, like you just mentioned.
Okay.
So there are surveys being given to our students. There are outside contracted companies coming in. They're contracted by the school system. They're coming in and they're doing school climate surveys, and it's in other ways as well. I even heard that some of the benchmark testing that our kids do consistently throughout the school year have some questions slipped in that are social emotional learning, but it's really to get the data and to focus on emotions, emotional state of students. And you see it starting in pre-K and kindergarten when the kids show up, and this doesn't seem harmless at all or seem harmful at all. Kids show up to school, and one of the ways some teachers will actually take attendance is by asking the children a question like, how are you feeling today? And so the children are starting at a very young age to respond to questions that are focused on their emotional health. And then it progresses to where they get to the types of surveys you just mentioned when they're older, middle school and high school, and they're answering questions that are very probing, private questions. And they've become desensitized or groomed to give up all of this information about themselves. One of the concerns I've had since we've been talking about Second Amendment and emergency risk protection orders and mental health ever since the Covenant shooting took place. One of my biggest concerns is how can this be used to disarm the next generation? So if you consider what those protection orders look like, where they're defining, well, they're actually not clearly defining mental health. It's kind of more of like who gets to define this, right? Mental health issues, mental illness, according to who. But if you consider how easy it would be with these types of restrictions to identify someone with some sort of mental health issues or to make a claim against someone with mental health issues and then disarm them. Well, think about how much data is collected on our students starting in kindergarten. By the time they're 18, how many of them will just not even be eligible to own a firearm to protect themselves, because there will be so much data on them pertaining to their emotional state, their sexual preference, their family life, their feelings of rage or aggression, whatever it might be. They will already, by the time they're 18, they won't get permission. It will no longer be about a right, a God-given right to protect yourself, or a Second Amendment right to bear arms. It will be, do you have permission from the government? And so that's one of the ways that I see that a lot of these things, between education and medical freedom, how it's tied in to our basic God-given rights.
Yeah, and one of the things that I just thought of while you were talking about that is, all right, let's say with this proposal under the governor with these red flag gun laws, so a teacher or someone in the school system deems that a child is on medication. That's one of the things that they were looking at, and is having emotional problems and maybe having issues. So they go and say, well, we know by the surveys and questions that we've asked that the parents have weapons. guns in the home. So the judge issues an order to take those guns out of the home, even though they belong to the parents. I think that's something that a lot of people is not even paying attention to, and they use it through the child with the school system. You follow where I'm coming from here?
Absolutely, yeah.
And people may not even think about that, and they use the child as a reason to go after these things, even though the parent may be a responsible gun owner who uses trigger locks and gun safes and everything else and keeps them locked up. All a judge has to do is say yes, take it,
Hmm.
and
And so
then the
this
law
goes back,
enforcement comes in and takes it.
and this goes back to why we have to be very, very aware of who we're giving our information to, what
Right.
sort of uh, just even responding to anything. I just don't respond to any surveys. I don't answer anything. I always opt my children out. And but it also goes back to this bill that was just passed this session that requires parental consent to opt in, and that's so important because I don't think most parents um, will choose to do so. It's much easier to get the kids in these types of programs or getting these services or responding when parents have to opt out, because then they actually have to take an action. So I do think this will help in Tennessee. It's not perfect. I would like to see these surveys just completely gone, because the data they're collecting, what is it being used for? Who's it given to? It's data that is leaving our counties, our school districts, possibly even leaving the state. So I don't like any of that data being collected on our students, because I feel like it could be really something that's going to come back and bite them in the future. But you're exactly right. Um, and this is why it's so important to expose. We have
Yeah.
to expose these types of issues and have these conversations, which goes back to being able to ask questions and have this kind of discourse.
Yes, and we've seen throughout the country, especially in Virginia and other states like that, where parents have showed up at school board meetings and start to ask questions or voice their concerns, and they've been arrested and everything else. And that's one of the things that I'll give Elaine Davis credit for. I actually interviewed her the other night about she got a bill passed this year that actually makes it state law that you can actually speak at government meetings now. So that would be in school board meetings as well, because it was not in the Tennessee code um, for that. So she actually got that law passed, and I think that's huge for especially parents' rights at addressing things going on in the school systems at the school board meetings. Now they have the little rules that they may have, but that they have to let the parents have a chance to speak.
Well, and I would say it's not just the parents. So in my county, I'm in Williamson County. Um, I want to say it was last fall, they voted to remove the right of non-parents, citizen, to file formal complaints against like the curriculum or whatever that's being used in the school district. So I believe they are still allowing any citizen to address the school board at a meeting, but there's definitely this push to remove taxpayers from being able to file any sort of formal complaint against the school district for curriculum. So we still have a little ways to go. Um, I would say in our county to push back on things like that, because those are taxpayers, and they have a right to make a statement or a claim against curriculum that's being used
Well,
in their district.
something just popped in my head right there when you said removing non-parents' ability to do that. Maybe we need a bill that says a non-parent can't be on the school board.
Um, I don't know about that, only because if you're a community member, we do have some
Right.
grandparents. They have, several grandchildren in the school system, and in that particular school board member is a very good school board member. So I don't know if I would necessarily support that. I see where you're going with it. If you're going to do that, then why not do
Right.
this? I agree that that's like, if that's the game you're going to play. But I I I wouldn't want to eliminate really good candidates that have their heart in the right place and they're on the right side of the issues from being able to participate in their government. At the end of the day, whether you have children in the school system or not, you are still living in the same community. And if our school system is raising up Marxist activists, you're a taxpayer paying for that, I think you have a right to engage in some conversation about that and have a say about that.
Well, that was just, you know, I'm not saying we need to do that, but that was just some way to go back at them and say, well, if you don't want non-parents getting involved, maybe we shouldn't let you guys serve on the school board. But
Yeah.
yeah, there's a lot of good grandparents out there. A lot of grandparents are raising kids and has, they're the actual guardians of them and stuff. And I don't want to especially keep them from serving and being able to speak and stuff. So it's just a way to get them to think, well, I'm a non-parent and I'm up here as well. And I see a lot of that on the school boards here. But I think
Yeah.
we also, given the new law changes and stuff here in the state of Tennessee, if we'll get focused on the grassroots level, we can actually make some huge choices and changes on these school boards to get some of this stuff addressed locally. Doesn't have to go through the state. We can do it locally. But
Exactly right. So I have something, since you mentioned that,
okay,
that I'd love to share with your listeners and viewers. So one of the things that I've done in Tennessee, obviously networking and getting to know the grassroots across the state, I've started two separate coalitions that are statewide coalitions. One is focused on election integrity, and one is focused on education. And these are coalitions that are open to any freedom loving citizen from across the state that wants to get more involved. And I mean, these coalitions are about work. So the Election Integrity Coalition, we call it Tennessee Fair Elections. We are looking at best practices and looking at election integrity as an ecosystem. So it's not just about the machines. It's also about the leftist infiltration, these NGOs that are influencing our election commission boards, as well as influencing our college campuses, and collecting data from college students that is used for other purposes and other means, such as rallies and protests at the Capitol. So we have an election integrity coalition. We're looking at voter rolls. We're looking at protecting vulnerable voters. We're looking at training poll watchers across the state. So that's an invitation for anyone who's really passionate about election integrity to come be a part of that coalition. The other one is an education coalition, and both coalitions are looking to build up a task force in every single county. And then coming together on each of these coalitions, I have a separate Zoom call where we come together across the state and we discuss what's going on in that particular issue and talk about best practices. We're educating people and we're communicating and collaborating across the state. So in the education side, the two main objectives, one is to flip school board seats across the state, and the second objective is to influence legislation. And we're doing legislation in the Election Integrity Coalition as well. So these are both opportunities for your listeners. If they're interested in getting more involved in either one of those issues, I can share my contact information with you as well, and then I can get them connected to that. And it's basically coming together across the state. One county might be very successful in something. Let's hear about it. Share what you're doing. And equipping people so that we can be more effective moving forward. So those are my two coalitions that I have, and like I said, those are open to citizens across the state. And we need task forces in every single county on election integrity, and we need a task force in every single county focused on education issues.
Got give contact information so people can get in touch with you if they'd like to get involved with what you're doing.
Yeah, I think the easiest way is to send me an email. Did you want me to go ahead and give that? You cut out a little bit. Did you want me to say my email address?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. It's Aundrea at citizensrenewingamerica.com. And so that's Aundrea is spelled AUNDREA at citizensrenewingamerica.com.
Okay. Good
And if
deal.
you just say which one you're interested in, then I can I'll get you connected.
And you're on Facebook as well. I guess they could look for you on there as well.
I'm on Facebook, Aundrea Gomez. I'm on Twitter, Aundrea Go at Aundrea Go. And then so those are a couple of the resources that we offer here at the state level. We do have with our national focus, we do have a weekly call that is for grassroots activists. It's every Thursday. And now this is not a Zoom call. This is just a phone call. It's an automatic phone call that when you register for it, your phone rings every Thursday at 4 p.m. Central, 5 p.m. Eastern Time. And for 30 minutes, you are listening to either Russ Vogt or our executive president of Citizens for Renewing America, Wade Miller, talk about the most up-to-date boots on the ground intelligence out of DC, what's actually happening, in real time. And there's even an opportunity for citizens to ask questions on that call as well. So it's the best intel that you're going to get that's a national focus intelligence. So if you're interested in that, I can also share that link to register your listeners if they would just want to send me an email.
Yep. Okay. Cool.
3 different resources there for you.
One of the things on the education I think was really here in the state of Tennessee. Of course, I was born and raised here, and I was in school before all of this stuff changed. I'm in my mid 50s. So long about 1993, of course, I got out of school in the 80s. Along about 1993, the Tennessee General Assembly, all Democrat controlled, passed a bill that would make it that all school board members, all school superintendents, school directors would be selected by the school board. Up until 1993, long about that time frame, they were always elected, and just like the school board members. And I think that was a big turning point in education and taking the focus, the parent control about what was going on in their school system, taking that control away from the voters. Nowadays, and I've seen it here in Hamilton County, how many school directors we go through in a 10-year period. They'll go hire the great interview from Virginia that moves here and takes a new job. It's a step up for them until they interview and you'll find out if you pay attention in the local press or whatever, they're always interviewing somewhere else. And so they're looking for the next job. It's going to pay them $50 more thousand a year. And so they move to that position instead of taking someone who is from the community, who has a passion for the kids and the education in that community, and voting for those people to run the school system, just like you would your county sheriff. And Senator Frank Nicely had worked on this for years, trying to get this overturned and given the control back to the parents and the voters. And I know David Seal out of Jefferson County has worked on it as well. So I think that is something, if we could ever get it done here in Tennessee, would be huge. giving the parents and the voters more of a voice in their local education.
I 100% agree and support that legislation. What we see is, and I think this is scalable across the state and across the country. But I'll just specifically say in my county, what you see is the way it's supposed to be is the superintendent, director of schools, is supposed to answer the school board, and the school board should be answering to the parents. So, the parents should be at the top, and then the power should trickle down from there. But what we're actually seeing is a flip of that, a reverse of that, where the school board really does seem to operate, not all of them, but the majority of them operate as if the superintendent is their CEO. And the school boards are very influenced by leftist school board associations, and they go to those trainings, and that's how they get acclimated into their new position. And so what we see is, something comes up for a vote, there's a little bit of discussion on it. Some school board members share their opinions or their concerns or ask questions, and then when it's time to vote, the chair turns to our director of schools and says, now do you what do you think? How do you what do you think we should do, and how do you think we should move forward? And then we have 12 school board seats, and so 10 out of 12 will vote with what the superintendent just said.
Yep.
And typically 2 will vote the way that I would prefer they vote. And that's a problem.
Yep.
He is not accountable. Really, it's just kind of this very circular relationship, and the parents are the ones that are cut out of it. And we've seen this across the state when it comes to library books, obscene materials that are in our school libraries, and parents are adamant that these books that are detailing rape, or suicide, this ideation of all of those horrible subjects, they're dark topics for children to be reading, or even the trans agenda, the LGBTQ agenda. Parents are adamant we need these books out, and the school board and the superintendent aren't listening, and they just keep going back to, oh, First Amendment, First Amendment. So yes, I think that would be a step in the right direction to address that issue for sure.
Yeah, and like I said, when I was in school here in Tennessee, that was the way uh, the school superintendent, director of schools was there, and I thought it worked pretty well. And man, if you look now and see how the schools are versus what they were when we were in school in Tennessee at that time, it's a big change. So I think that's something people need to look at. And but I think we really need to work harder on getting that message out on why it's important. So I
Well,
think
that's important, and also why it's important for not just parents but the whole community to be engaged in those local elections. It's kind of atrocious how low the turnout is. People like to turn out for a presidential election in Tennessee, and they get really excited about that. But then when you look at the school board races, the turnout isn't there for county commission and for school board and for your city alderman races. And that's, if we're gonna reclaim our country, we have to be focused at all levels, not just who's in the White House. That's putting way too much emphasis on one man or one woman or whatever, one individual in the White House, when you have a school board that has a whole lot of control over the worldview of your children.
yes, and that's where it's at. It's local and state issues, and that's why the focus of this podcast is on local and state issues. And you can turn on Fox News, CNN, all that garbage all day long, catch that stuff about Washington and everything else, or Ron DeSantis did this in Florida. I'm focused on where I'm at, my local government and my state government here. That's what I care about.
I agree. I do think working locally is extremely important and should be the priority. I do also think that we need to know what's going on at the federal level. because it does impact the state level. Uh, Obviously, we're seeing a lot of federal overreach, and in more states, including Tennessee, and our AG here, Jonathan Scrimetti, fighting for states' rights. So um, we we do need to be aware of what's going on at the federal level. I'll say this: we have in our budget, there's a lot of woke and wasteful spending,
Mhm.
and that affects us at the state level.
Right.
So our dollars going to the federal government and then being weaponized against us and coming back as, LGBTQ agenda, DEI focuses, which we know has nothing to do with inclusion and diversity of thought. It's the enforcement arm of a socialist mindset. So knowing what's going on at the federal level is still important, and we they are more impactful at the local level. But we need to be communicating with our congressmen, um, and letting them know that we support them, in when we had the speaker fight back in January. Center for Renewing America and Russ Vote, they were really instrumental on the speaker fight and in working behind the scenes on that. And so it was really important. My congressman Andy Ogles, he was being attacked. It was really important that the grassroots showed up and communicated their support for him as well. So it really always comes down to the relationships and having relationships with your elected officials. And they know that they can trust you, and you're going to bring them good insight and good information, and just work on that relationship so you can increase the access that you have to them. They're not hearing from us, like I said before, who are they hearing from? If we're not bringing them legislation, who's bringing them legislation? So we do need to be there, to support them as well, because it's hard to stand up, especially when you're a brand new freshman congressman. So they need to know that we support them, and they need to know when we don't support something, and that we're going to hold them accountable, and we're going to ask tough questions.
And when they do vote right and they do stand up, you need to call them and encourage them and thank them.
That's right.
For,
Yep.
and For me, that's something I've learned. It's always easy to make that phone call when you're upset about something, but calling them and saying, "Hey, I thank you for voting for this. It was a good bill. You done the right thing. Thank you for supporting." Um, I know you've seen this probably here in Tennessee. It frustrates me, but the reason why I say focusing on this local and state issues is because many of us here have seen, oh, Tennessee is super majority Republican. We're good here in Tennessee. This is the freedom state. And look what's going on in DC. They don't ever see, they're not paying attention to what's going on in Nashville and the local levels of how these people are just like constant as like a cancer trying to eat at everything at our freedoms. Just because you're got a super majority don't mean everything's great. But a lot of people have that mindset.
100% correct. And I've noticed that the ones that are ringing the alarm bells are often the ones that are refugees from other states.
Yes.
And I'll see, sometimes through social media, or even sometimes people will make the comment, well, we have all these problems in Tennessee because all these people moving here from blue states. And I have to disagree. It's the people that I know that have moved here from other states, including myself. We came to Tennessee because we thought Tennessee was deep red, and then we get here and we realize Tennessee has some of the same issues that California has. We're maybe a couple of years behind on some of those issues. So the threat really is DC. It's the DC mindset. It's that kind of globalist mindset, that growing central government, and kind of erasing the sovereignty of states. That is our threat. And so I try to be as nice as possible when I explain that the threat is not the new refugee. In fact, you might consider them a political prophet, because they've already watched this go down in their state, and they're here to tell you that you need to be paying attention. So sometimes when I hear what you said, oh, we're great. We have a supermajority. We have a Republican governor. I hear that from people who were born and raised here.
Hmm.
And I guess what it maybe is it's just that kind of like what you're used to, and it's that comfort, and that Tennessee is always going to be this way. And I even feel like with some of our legislators that they almost have an arrogance about them, thinking they're always going to have the power and control as a Republican Party. And so they don't necessarily think there's any threats in Tennessee until now, when obviously our Second Amendment rights are being threatened in Tennessee. So maybe now we'll start to see some of our Republicans wake up and actually recognize that Tennessee has a target on its back. If
Yes.
you can flip Tennessee, we're done as a country.
Yep. That's the gateway to the Southern Bible Belt is coming through Tennessee. I truly believe that. And, you know, and we'll start wrapping up here. But I met a couple from Pennsylvania at the Sevierville Grassroots Summit that you spoke at. And they, as I said, they were from Pennsylvania and they had recently moved down here and they were looking to get involved and uh, uh, be involved in their community. So they got word of this event and they came and they were listening to the speakers and stuff and they were like, "Holy cow! We had no idea things like this were going on in Tennessee." And uh, we seen this in Pennsylvania. We started seeing it. That's why we left and retired down here because they're trying to escape that stuff. And that's where we started using the term instead of them Yankee invaders coming down from the north. They're actually refugees trying to escape these liberal blue states, and they don't. When they come here, they hear how conservative Tennessee is. They hear all these reports. Even Fox News uh, will tell you that Tennessee is very conservative. When they get here, they're like, "Holy cow, we seen this 10 years ago where we came from." So you're right; they're like prophets.
Yeah, exactly. And there's nowhere to go after Tennessee.
Yeah,
So if you come to Tennessee and you recognize that we have problems here too, now it's time to stop running and stand up and push back
yeah,
because there's nowhere else to go.
yeah. And everybody said, "Well, we'll just move to Florida. Florida can only hold so many people," you know. And
And Florida, they have their issues too. We have to start fighting.
right, exactly. No more running. We have to stand and fight, stand up for our values and stuff. We've stuck our head in the sand for far too long and not did that. And it's time to stand up. So we'll wrap this up, Aundrea. Anything else that you want to add before we end this?
Well, if anyone's listening and they have a group in the state of Tennessee and they are interested in a speaker, I would love to come and meet your group and share Citizens for Renewing America and what we're doing. I'm really excited about grassroots development training and wanting to get in front of as many groups as possible to do that so that we are armed with skills and strategies for going into this next session. So love to meet you and talk with you. And if you want to just reach out through email, Aundrea at citizensrenewingamerica.com, I'd be happy to respond. And I look forward to just getting to know more grassroots across the state.
And I forgot to tell you this when we got started, to stay on the line once we end the recording of this, and we'll finish up there. But anyway, so yeah, you know, if you have a group, look for Aundrea or other folks to come and speak at your meetings. A lot of times we have this group and we have that group, and we do our thing and they do their thing, and you know what? We have to come together, and we may not always agree on every issue, but we will agree on more than what we disagree on. And we got to grow from those things and really grow the conservative grassroots movement here in Tennessee, because they want to keep us divided. We got to come together and work together to keep this state free and for liberty for our kids and, you know, our grandkids and everything else. I know that sounds political, some political speech that some politician will give, but you know, every once in a while they are right in some things that they say. So with that, I thank you for joining us on this podcast. I hope you will reach out to Aundrea and if you're interested in what she's doing, and if you find this information good, handy, share it with your friends and family and help spread the word here in Tennessee. That's how it's going to change, is that we help get each other's message out, spread freedom in Tennessee. With that, good day. God bless you. Have a good weekend, and we'll see you on the next podcast.